this.
What's this apple doing in here?
It's my apple. I was going to eat it on my way here, but...
You're way here. Alright.
On the 10th.
Yeah. You come from right around the corner? Literally, on this floor around the corner.
Welcome everyone to the Pat and Paul Show. My name is Paul McLotti. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Pat McLaughlin.
Hello, Paul.
Pat, you might notice that we have a third person with us today.
Yes.
A third wheel. An interloper, maybe you might call them. Him.
I wouldn't, but...
I might call him Ben Westrate.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Ben Westrate, everyone.
Good to be here.
Ben Westrate?
Westrate.
Westrate.
Westrate. Brought an apple.
I was going to make a comment about him being a dentist, but you just went straight for the punch.
Yeah.
All right.
Apple a day.
Apple a day keeps the Westrate away.
Yeah.
This is all just going to be about different ways to pronounce your name at this point.
You haven't hit the main one yet.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt both of you guys for this derails. What we're really here to do is talk about Circuit, our upcoming developer conference hosted by ICF Olson in conjunction with Adobe. Got the T-shirt here.
Last year's T-shirt.
Last year's T-shirt, probably a different design. And we got Ben here because he's giving a presentation.
Yeah.
So we want to talk to him about that. Maybe we'll get back in the last name at the end.
Yeah, well, we'll circle back around to it.
Yeah.
We'll see if we get there organically.
Yeah. So Ben, why don't you tell us what your presentation's about?
All right. I'm giving a presentation on Iron, which is a framework I built last year. I'm going to be presenting on the second iteration of that framework.
The sequel.
The sequel, if you will.
Are you nervous about having a flop for the sequel?
Yeah, as I've been talking with the two of you,
did you recast it all? Are you bringing the same fan favorites back?
Actually, I'm not. It's completely recasted.
That's always a dangerous move.
Yeah.
What was the budget on the sequel?
Right.
This budget was about a quarter of what it was last time.
All right.
I am surprised the studio greenlit this thing. To be honest with you, I'm shocked.
This might have been an indie effort. But,
Yeah.
Oh, it was. It was totally.
It's gonna be playing at Sundance.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, Ben, why don't you tell us what the Iron framework is endeavoring to solve? Like, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
With it?
So, as front-end tooling has evolved over the last 2 to 3 years, we've very often wanted to have the ability to use the new frameworks like Gulp or Grunt or Webpack in our AEM workflow for speeding up the build process for front-end, or actually speeding up front-end development, I should say. And very often that means bringing in a build tool like Webpack or Gulp or something like that. And there are some hurdles to get over for a team to accept kind of bringing Node into the AEM world. And originally Iron was built so that you could just run the command line tool and it'll set it up all of that for you, so you don't have to edit your POM file, you don't have to do any of that. It'll just read the parent POM and initialize some of the other necessary tools and add a Maven command for you to just run it for your backend developers.
So is this tool strictly for development, or does it play a part in the actual front-end code that is built and then rendered?
It's strictly for development.
Okay.
It's a framework for structuring your code on the front end. So over the years, I've kind of learned a few nice things to have as projects scale and get more and more components. It's great to be able to have like a dedicated way of finding your components and helps other people come onto the project and be able to roll on quickly and get up and be productive. And Iron kind of has a few assumptions about the way that you're going to set up your project. And then from there, it provides some APIs to facilitate that, but then let you use whatever build tools you want. So it's flexible.
So do you picture Iron as a one-time use setup, or is it part of your process?
It's part of the process, because once you have your initial code set up, or your initial project set up, you can then use it to create new components in a similar fashion. Front-end components, that is.
Gotcha.
So, say we were building a Facebook widget for a site, and you had just rolled on the project. All you have to do is download or install Iron on your local machine and do Iron component, and you'll give it a name, Facebook-like component, and it'll set it up for you in the project. And so it kind of gives you the ability to ramp up quickly, new developers, and keep the code in a similar fashion throughout the project.
Is Iron completely agnostic from the front-end frameworks that you're going to be using in a project, your Angular, React, Bootstrap? How does it work in concert with those, or is this outside of those decisions and more about setting up your build process?
It's completely about your build process.
Okay.
So you can use whatever quote-unquote front-end framework you want. So you could use React, you could use Angular, you could use Bootstrap.
It's interesting that you mentioned one of the challenges in this space is getting buy-in about the usage of Node in general. Are you seeing that resistance decreasing at all as Node gains maturity and popularity?
Yeah, definitely. So when I started building Iron about a year and a half ago, there was a lot of resistance, because there were a lot of unknowns as far as build tools on CI servers and that kind of stuff, whether these build processes would work and how to do that, how to set it up. And now that we've kind of been through that, there's a lot less friction as far as integrating Node into a project.
Because now the CI servers, Bamboo or Jenkins or whatever, they have modules for running. You just run Node builds or NPM, scripts or what have you. Whatever you're using. That's built in natively to a lot of the tools now.
Yeah. Where would you see the resistance coming from? You work as a consultant, so was it from corporate IT departments not wanting to, or is it from developers not wanting to introduce new tooling?
Developers. Particularly the back-end developers who hadn't really worked with JavaScript before or heavily with JavaScript. So
the Neanderthals, the
the
Luddites.
The Cro-Magnon men.
The Cro-Magnon?
Magnum. The Cro-Magnon men.
Cro-Magnon PI?
Yeah, that's it.
I think we got a spin-off there, too.
The first people. The first. First of their name.
Yeah.
Dark Ages.
Yeah. So the back-end developers and at the time, the project I was on, they were pretty open to using whatever tools we suggested. So that was nice. I'm sure that other projects, they'll have a tighter rein on what tools they want to use. And so this is actually, if they're using AEM, we'll have the ability to use Maven, and Iron sets all that kind of stuff up for you, which is nice. You'll be able to run a Maven task that installs Node locally on the CI server or the local instance, and runs tasks out of that binary right there, and so it's essentially seamless. So
I feel like a lot of this, there almost is going to have to be less resistance as time moves forward, because the way that I sort of see AEM progressing, the server side problems are sort of becoming more and more solved, or at least more and more standardized by updates to what's out of the box in AEM or updates to what's out of the box in Sling, where there's like very prescribed models and ways of doing things. Whereas on the front end, you almost can't prescribe models and ways of doing things there because, if you want a particular style, if you want a single page application, if you want to do this and that on the front end, how you do that is going to be, or what you need to do is going to be totally requirement specific and client specific. Right. And the front end developer and the front end build process almost then supersedes the needs of the back end developer and the back end build process. Like that's almost becomes the critical path on these projects.
Right, because at a certain point, the back end is just becoming a data access tier.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's really where it's going. All the interesting creative things are happening on the front end.
Right.
So more and more logic for sites and for pages are residing in the front end.
Right.
Because of these robust frameworks, you're able to do that in an organized way. I mean, there's patterns for unit testing.
Yeah, and because of
it's become
that,
way more maintainable than it was just having a bunch of script tags in your.
Right. And because of that, you want to cater to the front end developer. So it sounds like with version 2 of Iron, you revamped a lot of stuff. What sort of inspired the revamp, and what are the big changes?
It makes a few more assumptions in the way it names things. It assumes the base name for your project, or the folder where all the components and AEM or the bundles of files is going to be your project name and then Iron FE at the end of it. So it's basically going to say, okay, your root level folders, and then I'm going to build another folder in there with all of this in there. And then same thing with the Maven tasks. It let you pick what you wanted it to be named before, and now it's just Iron install and Iron build.
Yeah.
And so those are actually, the Maven piece is not published yet. It's coming in the next week or so, but
pre-circuit,
yes. Yeah. And then the other major change I made to it is I changed the underlying CLI tool, and so now it's much more like a typical CLI flow. So you type in Iron and then an argument, say you want to build a new component, so Iron -- component, and then the name of the component, and then you can add more arguments on there depending on what you want to do. And it's much quicker. It doesn't ask you questions and have you do selections. It's a much more streamlined approach.
You got anything else, or is that enough?
I think that's enough.
Or did you want me to chastise him?
No, God, no, not about that.
Okay. What is the main?
Well, they say what's gate.
That's not even the right letters.
I know.
There's no G in it.
That's not a mispronunciation. That's just the wrong name.
Right.
Yeah. It's like calling you Ben Smith. The mispronunciation of my last name is Johnson.